What I found myself bumping up against, which is what prompted me to reach out to Penn, was what students thought love should look like, what they thought a healthy relationship should look like, mistaking high conflict for passion, peace for boredom. They had such distorted understandings of what a healthy relationship should look like. And so much of it was fueled by the media. At the same time, his show was getting more and more popular, and I was noticing how often people would joke about like, "Oh, put me in your cage, Joe." And I was just like,
Let me talk to the man who built that cage. Let me talk to him right now.
Hey there, it's me, Rainn Wilson, and I want to dig into the human experience. I want to have conversations about a spiritual revolution. Let's get deep with our favorite thinkers, friends, and entertainers about life, meaning, and idiocy. Welcome to the Soul Boom Podcast. Hey folks, I'm so excited to be here with Penn Badgley, of course, who you know, who has brought a friend, Dr. Nura Mowzoon. I'm so excited to dig into this. This is really this just completely energizes me and inspires me what you are about to undertake. It's really exciting. But before we go there, how did you guys meet? I just want to get all the background here.
So my understanding of it is that...
Your understanding of how we met?
My understanding, which is different, it's through my producing partner, Nava Kavlin, is friends with you and had been for years. Well, the phone call that I got was basically like, everything that she just described about her fascination with, her research of, her study of love, because she knew that I was interested in the sometimes woefully toxic misconceptions of love and kind of like bad practices of love, which are widely perpetuated in so many, like just countless television shows, movies, books, something I thought about a lot. Ultimately, the question I would ask myself sometimes when I was on a show like Gossip Girl is like, what effect does this have? There's positive effects. I'm not going to overlook those anymore. But are there negative effects? Are there consequences to consuming this kind of content? For our youngest people who are more or less unwitting in that process that's happening, and that on my worst days, on my most cynical days, my least grateful days, that would really bother me. And so. But what I never really had the opportunity to do is speak to somebody who was like specialized in the study of this. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, if I remember correctly, you wanted me to come speak about that, and really what I said was like, well, I'd feel much more comfortable if it was a conversation, right? Yeah. With somebody who really was a professional in this capacity, and you're like, well, that's me.
Just so happens.
Right?
My background is in therapy, so I'm trained as a marriage and family therapist. And I have a private practice where I work with couples and individuals about all things relationship and love-oriented. And then I also teach at Arizona State. So I work with college kiddos. And
college kiddos. I don't think you've ever said that before.
You work with little sun devils?
Little baby sun devils.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you teach there?
The social sciences. So I have a couple classes on courtship and marriage, and then like a basic sociology 101. And then a couple classes that deal with the psychology of race and prejudice and racism and groupthink.
And did that talk happen?
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah. And went well?
Well enough.
Yeah,
certainly.
It went great. I think it went great.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I'm the most passionate about, especially in the classes that focus on courtship and marriage and things like that, is I'm very invested in trying to teach them the science of attachment, love, relationships, and how to make better choices and hopefully how to have healthier relationships.
And good Lord, do I wish that somebody when I was college age had made the effort to do that, because I may have overlooked it. I may have had that in my life, but didn't recognize it, but I do not recall it. I don't recall anybody being able to provide that.
It's so rare that it's modeled for us.
Yeah.
It was certainly my dad's 4 marriages, my mom's 5 marriages and the dysfunctional marriage that I grew up in,
Hmm.
it was never modeled intimacy,
Yeah.
how to talk through conflict,
Right.
how to express anger in a healthy way. That's something I had to learn in my 40s.
Yeah.
That anger is justified and it's okay, and you can earn it, and it's important to express. But how do you do it in a constructive way and not a destructive way? That took a lot of
Yeah.
work. But isn't it so much about modeling in the home, and especially as the family structures and family units are breaking down more and more? It's pretty rare that someone gets all of those
It is.
healthy aspects of
I would
loving
say so.
relationship modeled.
Yeah, definitely rare.
Well, it's not sexy. It's not what we see in the movies. It's not what we see in TV, and what I found myself bumping up against, which is what prompted me to reach out to Penn, was what students thought love should look like, what they thought a healthy relationship should look like, mistaking high conflict for passion, or mistaking peace for boredom. They had such distorted understandings of what a healthy relationship should look like, and so much of it was fueled by the media. And so at the same time, his show was getting more and more popular, and I was noticing how often people would joke about, like, "Oh, put me in your cage, Joe," and I was just like,
Let me talk to the man who built that cage. Let me talk to him right now.
Let me pause here. This is a fascinating sociological event that happened,
Yeah.
which was you have this like obsessive, unhealthy psycho killer zeroing in on various love interests, and love interests zeroing in on him in the same kind of way. And then you had all of these young women going, I wish I had my Joe.
Yeah.
I wish I had the person who is standing outside my window masturbating.
And
like,
plenty of men also, whatever their orientation may be, like it was people across the board either wanting love like that or being like somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but maybe an uncomfortable seed of truth to like, I have that to give to you, or just some there was everybody who I think the point is that everybody who watches the show has an unhealthy relationship to Joe. I think that's the point.
Yeah, interesting. So, and I'll just say real quick, sidebar, there was that interesting similar phenomenon on The Office, actually, because I kept hearing from people like, you can't believe it, go on these dating sites and like it's like a Jim looking for his Pam. That was a very kind of thing. And there was a myth there in The Office that there was this, there was this longing between the two of them, and she was taken and then he was taken. And how many seasons? Can we get through 6 or 7 seasons before they get married?
Yeah.
Where there's just this kind of like longing, but they can't have each other. And then there's some kind of a truth or purity in the love between Jim and Pam, when actually that's really not very healthy.
It's not ideal.
It's not ideal.
Yeah.
In actuality, then I think about it, I think the D'Angelo relationship from The Office is actually a better indicator of like real love, because they have their struggles and ups and downs. She's kind of a cat lady, church lady, and he's this misfit weirdo with zero social skills. And they find each other. These two misfits find each other. They have their ups and downs. They break up. They get together. They get with other people. They come together at the end. And he's like, "I'm going to love you with the force of 1,000 waterfalls." And he proposes with a megaphone. Let this megaphone be how loud I love you, and. It's actually a truer love story than the Jim and Pam bullshit. You heard it here. So
I like that.
Suck it,
So
Jim.
suck it.
Jim and Pam.
But going back to the Joe thing, how do you guys understand this phenomenon?
I think a lot of women just really appreciate a man who thinks he knows what he wants and goes after it. Like, we say it kind of tongue in cheek.
Is that confidence? Is it certitude?
I hear that. I've heard it in society. I've heard it from women friends of mine. But a lot of feminists might push back and say that's a traditional male role that can be easily toxified. I'm a man and I know what I want and I'm going after it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the kind of like confident man who's going to like take charge and take control, which can lead to not being sensitive, not being responsive, not listening, etc. How do you factor those two things together?
I think they all kind of coexist. I think that I'm not trying to imply that Joe's character is healthy at all. I think women.
Not what I heard.
Okay. I think.
But you just said that women like men, or women think they like men who kind of know what they want and take charge and go after it.
Not so much, not necessarily the take charge component. I think some women do, some women don't care. But it's about a man who is
all in
and willing to commit.
Yeah.
That resonates with me because I do think the dating world right now, I mean, I'm just like, happy to be in a relationship that I love and married to a person that I love for a lot of other reasons, but also practically it's just like, thank God I don't have to deal with the shenanigans.
Oh, it sounds like a hellscape out there.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, just young people looking for like an authentic relationship, which I totally, that resonates with me because that's what made me despair a lot in my teens. But, particularly women looking for men, there is undoubtedly like the gender norms are and stereotypes are there for a reason because they are still dominant, right? They're still prevalent. Like this idea that men are trash, like this perspective where I think young men in particular really do struggle with feeling confident enough in themselves to commit to a relationship, a monogamous relationship, because of all these other ideas about who they need to be in order to project masculinity and stuff. So what I hear from like really close female friends is I'm almost like, men are trash. Like some of these stories, some of the, it's just like, my goodness, why is this so hard out there for women? Of course, I think the other side is that there's like men are having their own thing.
On the other side, with women too, you have that. Remember the hit viral song like "I'm looking for a man 6'4" with a trust fund.
Yeah,
I don't remember that one, but I get the vibe.
You'll know it if you heard it. I'm looking for a man in finance.
6'4" trust fund. This was like a number one one song that was sampled from a girl talking about what she wanted in a relationship.
Yeah.
So a lot of men,
they feel inadequate.
I know that if I put myself at 23 and I'm this gangly, kind of pimply, insecure, wannabe actor, kind of like, I don't fit that. I don't even have enough money to buy a burrito.
Aren't you? Are you?
6'2",
You're over 6'4". That's all
you
people care about.
barely. You can't even. Guys, just so the confidence I had that I was going to be 6'3".
Oh.
Why? Why on earth did I think I was going to be 6'3"?
Do people still call you a short king?
Yeah, I want to say that's a toxic misconception. Okay, I am not
a short king.
Yeah, so the internet thinks my impression. The internet thinks I'm just a little bit shorter than I am. Yeah, but I've been called a short king before.
Anyway, where were we going?
Yeah, I do want to touch on something really quickly. We can edit it out if we want, but I do want to touch on this idea of like how easily we throw out this idea that men are trash. I think it's become really casual and normalized to talk about men in that way because I think women feel like it's almost owed to us after such a long period of oppression, which we have experienced. And this ties into what we do with Can We Talk? I think the pendulum is swinging a little bit too far in the other direction where we've become too comfortable being incredibly disrespectful to the other gender or the other race or the other sexuality or whatever it is, the other. We've gotten so comfortable being casually insulting. And then we wonder why change isn't really happening. So I know that there are a lot of men who are so tired of the trope of men being trash.
And I think that's also what often pushes them towards these more radical kind of perspectives.
Exactly.
Where they're kind of doubling down on their own toxic masculinity without realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's well said, though. I like what you're saying to me, that kind of gets to the seed of what we're always working on, which is like the ways in which we perceive the other and what is now culturally not just expected or acceptable. It's almost like believed that it's the way forward. Progressive is to be belittling of the other,
Yeah.
to belittle someone else's cause, belief, or, ultimately what you see as their flaws, where you see them as wrong, is where you belittle them, as opposed to maybe initially really listening and trying to understand and finding points of unity. What we're talking about here and exploring is not the same thing as I don't know, like a superficial level of agreement and unity, which is just about maintaining civility and respectability for the sake of actually for the sake of social norms. What we're exploring in our sort of thesis is that the social norms that we all want to get rid of, and we have different ones that we believe we need to get rid of, but if there's something that you want to deconstruct and then construct something in its place, we're suggesting that quite counterintuitively, the more patient way forward is the fastest way forward. And it's initially harder, but it's where what you learn kind of maybe more than anywhere else is say in your romantic relationship, you learn it in marriage, is you may have in your sight an objective truth about, say, a dynamic between you and your partner. But if you just tell them they're wrong and you don't listen to them and how they feel and why they are acting a certain way because they believe you're acting a certain way, you're actually never going to get anywhere. You're never going to get anywhere. And vice versa. If you're wrong, what is the process which leads you to believe you're wrong? And let me just posit to everybody listening, at some point you've been wrong. Right, we've all been wrong. It's invariable, inevitable, undoubtable. So, have you ever been brought to a point where you realize you're wrong by somebody? Or maybe you've realized it on your own, but what is the process at work there, How do we bring truth to the foray? How do we actually discover truth together, as opposed to assuming that we've already got truth and we need to either convince or belittle other people about our understanding of truth? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Was that coherent? I don't know that it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You did
100%.
great.
Thanks.
Going back to the Joe thing,
Yes.
I think that one of the things I've noticed in my old age is there seems to be a lot more, and this might be kind of inflamed by social media, people kind of talking over each other and not really listening. And there's something about Joe that he is present. I see you.
That's interesting.
I hear you.
You're so right.
He's curious.
I'm really deeply grokking you. And that's what people are longing for. And they do the dates and the dating app, and they have the coffee and so where are you from? Where'd you go to college?
And he's just
Yeah.
I'm not here for that.
Yeah.
I'm here for you.
And,
Okay.
and
that's what it is.
No, it's
That's what it
perfect.
is.
but there isn't that a missing component in today's kind of quest for love?
I actually think this is to see the kind of to see the good and spiritual impulse in anybody who really loves Joe too much, or just really, I guess, at all. It's that what you just named is what we all actually deserve. We all have a right to be listened to, right? And we don't seem to live in a time and place where that happens a lot. Even within your own family, you probably didn't grow up with it. We're all struggling to be heard, and therefore we can also start acting more in ways that it's not easy to listen to, But yes, I think that is where, shout out to all the fans in the stands, what we have done with the show is we purposefully created a character who listened impossibly. That's what I do. I go to work 85, 90% of the time, I'm not talking. And I stare, and often people come on the show, in the beginning, they're a little bit like, this is so different. Somebody else is reading my thoughts, and I'm just I can stare at someone now without doing anything for so long and not be uncomfortable.
That's great.
So really, it's I don't have to move. I'm just here. And sometimes after a long take, I'll be like, because all I was doing was just listening to you. And any chance I can have a feeling, So in a sense, the whole point of me saying that, though, is that I think what people are responding to is actually, in some ways, an actor who's not thinking about any of the serial killer, blah, blah, blah. I'm not foreshadowing all I'm trying to do
Be present.
is be present.
Yeah.
And
There's a power in that.
That is a charm no matter who you are or how you do it.
That's
if you
the
can
whole
attain,
purpose of the movie being there.
Right.
Chauncey
one
Gardner
of my favorite movies.
just listens, and people put all this stuff onto him because he's just so present.
Yeah.
Oh, he must be a genius. Let's elect him president, you know?
But I do want to add to that because I think that's part of it. But I also think Joe represents kind of this dangerous trap that a lot of women fall into, which is the wounded good guy.
Who needs to be fixed?
The
you mean?
guy, the guy with a good heart, good intentions. Joe was so tormented and he doesn't want to be. And, he can turn into this puppy dog of like, I love you. This is why I'm killing everyone. And girls are like, I can change him. But he represents, I think, what so many women, including myself, have struggled with over the years of being drawn to the good guy, or the guy with the wounded, good-hearted guy.
Not the bad boy. Is that different?
That's another type of.
The wounded. I think
the wounded good guy is the same as the bad boy.
No. The bad boy doesn't care. The wounded good guy is like, I love you, but I'm just not ready. I gotta, yeah, exactly. The bad boy is like, I don't need you. I don't need anyone. And then the girls are like, oh my God, he's so hot. But
he must be right with God then. He must be self-subsistent.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're different tropes with different magnets, but
fascinating.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, it's me, Rainn, and today I want to tell you about one of my favorite products, Element Zero Sugar Electrolyte Drink Mix, and it has become a game changer in my daily routine. And I mean a tennis game changer. I have been using this for years in my tennis game. You put these little salty, delicious electrolyte packets in your water bottle and you will never cramp up and you'll never dehydrate. Not only does it taste great, it keeps the hydrated energy focused throughout the day. And it's not just podcast hosts, folks. Professional athletes, Olympians, and Navy SEALs rely on Element for their hydration needs. Here's what you want to do. Get your free Element sample pack with any purchase at drinkelement.com/soulboom. And don't forget to try the new Element Sparkling, a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. If you don't like it, Element will give you your money back, no questions asked. It's risk-free, so give it a try. Stay hydrated, stay awesome, stay soul boomy.
One of the questions that we actually posed to the audience that I think is a really powerful one is, what do you have to lose by humanizing the enemy?
Wow, that's fascinating. What does that mean? That's such a great question.
So this question was inspired by a TED Talk given by Cassie J. She's talking a lot about gender dynamics and masculine female dynamics and feminism and the men's movement and all of that, and how she was doing a documentary about the men's movement, and in the process of making this documentary, because she was setting out to basically show the world why it was toxic and horrible, and they were all, awful human beings. And she said that in that process, as she interviewed more and more men, she realized how so many of them were actually just in so much pain. And when she would talk about that, her community, as she called it, felt like she was a sellout and she was a hypocrite. And so she said that in her journey, she realized one of her biggest takeaways is often when you humanize your enemy, you risk being dehumanized by your community.
It's deep.
It's deep, and I think it's another piece of this puzzle that we're trying to figure out. Is a lot of the time, the energy behind the dynamics that we have and the friction that we have is me coming from a place of us and you being relegated to a place of them. And it's me and us versus you. And if I was to accept that you have a point, or to accept that maybe we agree on something, what does that mean about the us that I now belong to?
Right. This happens a lot in the conflict in Israel and Gaza and Palestine.
Yeah.
Where Arab folks, Palestinian folks who broach conversation with their Jewish neighbors are betrayers of the Palestinian cause, and Jewish folks that are protesting, the Israel military's use of force. They're self-hating Jews, So it almost negates any kind of possible coming together for some kind of commonality or understanding, which is almost impossible under the best of circumstances.
Yeah.
But if you have those two sides being shut down in that way, there's no way you could proceed.
Well, and we have all kinds of creative and pseudo-intellectual labels for things like that. Like a woman a woman like Cassie J, who's talking about men being in pain. The common thing to call her would be, say that she has internalized misogyny. So we just throw labels like that just shuts down this conversation that really needs to be had. And, you were giving a few examples there too. And I think we're just so quick to throw these labels on things because to do anything different is really uncomfortable. And we end up making our beliefs our identity. And one topic that we're talking about, which is incredibly important, but we end up making it our identity. And so when anybody thinks any differently, our identity actually feels threatened. Rather than our belief being questioned, we interpreted it as our identity being threatened.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. If we so internalize our opinions and our beliefs that they become part of who we are, that's why people get so reactive, is because they feel their very identity is being attacked. And you talked earlier about like taking it personally.
You have to ask yourself, do I see the world as progressing, albeit maybe very slowly, but at all towards this sort of vision of agreement and unity, which leads to healthy transformation for all, which would also bring justice, more justice progressively in degrees for all. If the answer is I do not see that happening, again, our thesis and our suggestion is, well, here's why. We're addicted to anger. That's a gross oversimplification in some ways, taken in the context of everything else we've said. But we're addicted.
You could say,
anger.
just like what Dr. Nura said, like you get a dopamine hit from righteous anger.
Right.
It sure seems like our whole country is like on a dopamine treadmill of righteous anger.
Yeah, if not the world, and to us, we see that as a grave, serious, great problem and tragedy, and we're simply trying to offer what we understand as part of the solution.
One way of thinking about it.
And social media doesn't help. What's the role that plays?
That one kind of changes, I feel like, over time, because it's like it gets worse, but then you don't want to deny the intrinsic value of the immediate connection between people on like opposite sides of the planet, something that we like, if there's value I bring to the table, it's like, okay, we're trying to frame this in a way where it's like we have the entrance points. So let's remember on social media, it's not the phones or social media that's inherently bad. It's the fact that these are privatized platforms designed specifically to get you in habitual engagement. Twitter is not just the place where people unanimously agreed or just intuitively decided that 140 characters is the best way for us to come together as a species and communicate. It happened because of an understanding of the attention span on a device. Certain colors were chosen in order to communicate certain
algorithmic kind of dopamine control
manipulation.
manipulation.
I think capitalistic algorithms and our best understanding of human psychology in order to addict people more or less
Yeah.
is at the core of every app we use.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It is.
Even on Amazon, I get these
Yeah.
notices of like, hey, review the product you got.
Yeah.
But because they want me to go back.
They want you to go back to the app.
review it,
Right.
and then say people who bought this also bought this, and then they want you to spend more time. But big box stores do the same thing where
Yeah.
they put, the free samples at Costco are in the back
course,
of
it's
the
the same-
store. They want you spending more time in the
In the
store.
store.
In the front of the store, like barbecue ovens and like dehumidifiers that no one wants. The stuff you
Mattresses.
want, you need to kind of go
Yeah.
to the back of the store because they calculate the amount of time you spend in a box store, the more money you're going to spend.
Exactly.
And they've just kind of taken that same algorithm and put it on your phone.
Yeah. So we don't want to sound like boomers just saying social media is just a bad,
So
toxic place and it's the phone.
Understand the kind of capitalistic principles.
Yeah. Preying on your
Right.
brain.
So don't
on
be a
your-
victim
Yeah,
to
like-
your own
Right.
algorithmic dopamine.
And
Yeah.
something that we've done before, but we've not formalized is like, just like what are some practices we can do to like kind of de-escalate your own like habit,
Mhm.
right? Like, and just know that, okay. I can't be there at that protest right now, or I can't engage directly with this thing that really is inspiring me. So I'm doing this, and like how do I take that feeling and transform it and turn it into some seed of meaningful action if that's what I'm desiring.
Mhm.
And again, that's the more high-minded, like kind of social justice aspect of things. It's not necessarily, that's not the whole picture.
And even social media is designed to feed you the negative first.
Mhm.
Yeah, right.
With the negative comments and the criticisms are always at the top. And
Outrage,
Outrage.
equals a faster click or a faster
Yeah.
engagement than something that's pleasant.
yeah,
Even with this knowledge here, which I espouse and live in sometimes, hopefully not a complete hypocrite, I don't go to social media, or rather when I'm on social media, and I use it increasingly less, I can totally see and feel like I don't want something meaningful. I'm not habituated to that. Like, I want something that's going to kind of flick my switches and just get my sensors going and
Or
make
numb
me
you.
feel, yeah, right, exactly. The only time I ever spend more than, say, 15 or 20 minutes on it at a time is when that process is happening. It's the doom scrolling, or whatever we now call it, dopamine scrolling. And I mean, we were saying before, like how we've deleted social media off our phones, but now YouTube actually
Now it's
is a
YouTube.
place where,
Yeah.
you know,
The YouTube shorts.
yeah,
Someone flipping their kayak or an otter living in
Right.
someone's kitchen.
Oh, but that's so cute.
It's so
that is so cute.
cute.
Guys, raccoons? How about raccoons and their little hands?
Yeah, they're so,
Oh,
Human hands.
so little.
Whale breaching videos I was really into recently. Like that's
That's like majestic. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
let's go watch some. Come on, guys. This is boring. Let's go
Come
turn
on,
on
guys.
YouTube. Dr. Arthur Brooks was on the show as one of my favorite human beings on the planet, one of the wisest. He did a commencement address at Brigham Young University where, and this is a thesis that he comes back to again and again and again. He said, what has happened in the modern world is really quite simple. We need to disagree better.
Yep.
It's okay to disagree. We have to learn how to disagree better. Disagree with respect. Disagree with civility. Disagree with like compassion.
and can I ask the most obvious next question? Why? Like we're obviously with you, but I think a lot of people, especially young people, in a culture that is so used to a form of emotional violence, intellectual violence, actual violence, the question comes to some people screaming for justice, why?
Yeah.
Why is it important to disagree better? Why do we need civility? We've not been treated civilly.
Because, right. And I would say the answer to that, from my perspective, is the alternative is not fruitful. So if you want change, you have to disagree better. If you want real change, yes, you can yell at people. It might feel really good. Like if I said, here's one of two, I'm going to say two incendiary statements to you. Okay. Affirmative action has been proven to not work, and we need to stop having race-oriented kind of scholarship at schools. We've tried that for decades. It doesn't really work. And you throw that out. Now, do you throw that out to a lot of people? They hear that opinion, not my opinion, but you hear that opinion, and you're a racist. And so it becomes a really instantly like a super hot button issue. And then if as soon as you lob the R word at someone, you're a racist. Like that shuts down the conversation and the consultation, and it doesn't move anything forward. But I understand the reactivity because it comes from hundreds of years of oppression and being held back. So how would you deal with something like that in Can We Talk?
Oh, the most challenging and vital issue of racism in America. Yeah, I mean, it's of course a question that begs asking. Certainly, this is something that specifically race is something that we do explore a lot, and I think we make it interactive, right? I mean, we're not trying to act as like certainly I as a white man am not going to be speaking about it in certain ways, but let me just underscore that that's a very important question.
Are you asking how do we talk about race?
I'm using that as an example.
Yeah.
And saying if someone was at one of your events and said, "Here's my opinion."
Yeah, right.
If you said like, "What's an opinion you had that's potentially dangerous or incendiary?" and someone said, "I don't believe in affirmative action. I've read a lot about it. I don't think it works, and here's why." And then immediately people were bristling at that. Uh-oh, this person's probably racist.
Yeah.
How do you foster dialogue over something like that?
Well, I think that for me, the first question that I ask people is, do you want to make progress? Do you want to make change? Or are you angry and you just need to be angry for a minute?
Vent or something.
Yeah, because that's valid, that's legit. But are you wanting change or are you wanting to vent? Two different paths, two very different
Well, can I say that maybe
approaches.
that totally has validity to it? I wonder, because we're approaching it in an analytical way, and I think what's worked really well about Can We Talk is that when that kind of, because race, of course, has come up, kind of anything, you name it, like has come up. I feel like right after Ukraine was invaded, we had a Ukrainian, right, refugee student, and like they were speaking, it's like. And it was the first question, actually, I think it was asked at that
it was right out the
event.
gate.
Yeah, and and it's like, this stuff is real and it's emotional, it's visceral, and we always approach it from a heart-centered space. So it's like, so what you just said, I mean, I like, and then I also think we're also here talking about it at this table, there's always the risk of removing context, intellectualizing it, and then making like a false dichotomy or a binary where there doesn't need to be one. Like, somebody can be angry and want progress at the same time.
Not with that statement, though.
What's the statement?
Saying you're a racist.
Oh. Okay,
yeah. So I'm responding to that specifically. Like,
okay, yeah.
Are you in a constructive headspace or are you not? And I think that's the most important thing to recognize at first is what kind of headspace are you in? They're all valid. We just have to know what we're working with and where you're coming from. And then I think the next step after that is then being curious. Because if somebody was to say you're a racist based off of one statement that you make that might be incomplete or misunderstood or just taken in the wrong way, which is, I guess, being misunderstood, that's a really hard one to not get defensive about. That's a really hard one to be like, tell me more. Why do you think that? That's maybe like the one time that I'm like, no, I'm not. Flip the table over. But I think if you can get to a point of being curious and wanting to understand their why and where they're coming from and what they're hearing, because half the time what you're saying is not what the other person is hearing when it becomes inflamed like that.
It's probably more than half, right? I mean, it's like most of the time, it seems, at least at the social level.
Yeah.
We're talking about, like, talk
yeah.
about social media spaces, especially if the matter of race and racism is the topic at hand. I mean, yeah, like how often are people who need to be communicating actually hearing each other?
Yeah.
That certainly doesn't happen on Twitter.
Right.
No.
You were talking about some universals in communication between couples and universals between just good, solid communication. What are some of those rules?
Well, a big one that comes to my mind is the more you feel like you have in common with the person you're talking to, the more pliable you are in some of your thoughts. So if you feel like the person you're talking to is like you or gets you, there's more room for them to insert something a little bit different for you to think about.
So it's finding a point of commonality
Yeah.
so that you foster that
Mhm.
kind of feeling of commonality and
building from that.
building from it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would say that's the most effective. I think trying to, and we said this a second ago a little bit, but trying to stay in a place of mindful responsiveness rather than hot-headed reactivity, which that's a hard one because psychologically, if I can just for a second, our brains are actually wired to give us a dopamine hit. Our reward centers go crazy when we think that we are operating from a place of justice and putting somebody in their place. When I think I'm telling you off and putting you in your place, and I'm a social justice warrior, the reward center in my brain is
Lights
going
up.
crazy.
Wow, I had no idea about that.
Yeah,
Right.
this was found in a study done by Yale, I believe.
Which is a great chemical impulse for the human condition to speak up, find your voice, speak the truth, speak truth to power, and you get actual, chemical reward, but it can be dangerous because then you take it too far.
And
then everywhere you go, you're like, Gaza!
Yeah.
And it's just, and there's no conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So recognizing that is really important.
We've stumped Penn.
Well, what I like to do is often play devil's advocate to like myself, which is a terrible loop to always be in. But to what we're saying. So like earlier we named somebody who is justifiably angry at a potentially racist statement and then accusing someone of racism. Or maybe identifying them as a racist. And then we just named somebody who might, whether they identify as a social justice warrior or that's what somebody maybe belittling them might call them because they're vocal on social media. What's interesting is that we happen to have just sort of imagined people who ostensibly are more on the sort of liberal and progressive side. And what I hear from progressives and liberals, which much of my life has been the sort of milieu I've come from, is an impatience with the suggestions we're making because there are certain accusations made of, say, someone who is racist, which are true, which is that is somebody who is exhibiting racist ideologies and beliefs and willfully being hateful and ignorant because past a certain point you have to be responsible for who you are and how you think and how you act, And so I'm just thinking of somebody who might be listening and wondering, I just want to poke even more, like, why is it that because there's something called respectability politics, right, which has been leveraged against Black Americans and other people of color historically, which is to say,
talk to us about that. What is that?
So as I understand it, it's basically suggesting that in the name of civility, basically you're just policing people's behavior and actually enforcing the status quo, which is racist. I mean, it just is. It's otherwise we wouldn't have it.
It's holding people down.
It's
like,
holding
you're
people
being
down.
too angry, and we're not able to have a conversation because you're so angry. So simmer down.
Yes.
And that actually is oppression.
Exactly. So so I think what we have to be careful about is using language and speaking in a way about these things, which can sound coded to others and which it has like historical bias in it, and what we're doing and what often happens on the stage in the moment when we're talking to college students, of every background, which is really cool. Such heart comes out, such patience comes out, such curiosity comes out. Everybody who comes to these events is like really interested in being like, yeah, so what is this? But then I'm thinking about people who, for whatever reason in the moment or just habitually are not thinking that patience is going to get us anywhere. thinking that the word civility to me, civility has, I don't like that word. Just like I don't like to use the terms white privilege anymore or woke, or because they've just been kind of siphoned of their meaning, and they've been weaponized, right? Like they have. And because we live in a world where these violent oppressive norms are still being violent and oppressive to countless groups of people, you know, it's like the time is now, the urgency couldn't be higher, and the idea that we have to almost like slow down and listen to each other sounds crazy. You know, I just want to acknowledge that I think it does sound to some people like, are you sure? Because guess what? I've even tried that, I think, or I've done that, I think, or I've seen it happen and not work. Oh, do you want me to be like that one black dude who made friends with several KKK members and like one by one is, I guess, deconstructing the Ku Klux Klan? Like, is that what we're saying? And I just feel like, you know, if we're not careful, that, and by the way, we're careful. We're trying to be careful. We're trying to explore, like, yeah, in a lot of ways, you're right. In a lot of ways, like, it feels like we don't have time for that. In a lot of ways, it feels like it's too urgent. But, you know, we really believe, I think part of the premise that we have here is like, it's too important, it's too urgent to not have the patience to like, to set about really exploring what is going to move us as a people, as a world forward, you know? And I mean, I guess that sounds a little bit grandstandy because it's very big, but the reason we're starting with like, okay, so then what are the dynamics between just two people?
Right.
What, okay, so let's play devil's advocate to this whole premise. So then between two people who are upset with each other, angry, how do they not only resolve, but discover a truth together, which then binds them together,
Oh, that's great.
and provides insight to both of them, which actually makes them both better and more knowledgeable, more understanding, more whole, because they're more open-ended and curious. And it's like, okay, that little bit of my bias, I just shifted open a bit, and I'm now letting in other things.
It's not about invalidating the anger. It's about harnessing it in the right way, which can feel stifling. You know,
like I talked about, you know, in the family home, oftentimes if healthy anger isn't modeled, it becomes very difficult to express.
Absolutely. One of the cornerstones of consultation is dispassionate conversation, right? So you remove the self, you remove the ego from the conversation in an effort to actually find truth. The effort is not to be understood. The effort is to seek truth. And scientifically, this is one of the most fundamental principles of the happiest couples, is the couple who removes ego from conversation. So many people think that the happiest couples are the couples who know...
Who don't have conflict.
Right. Or the couples who know how to de-escalate it. So they know that, like, if you're getting upset, if I put my hand on your shoulder, or if I crack a joke, or, you know, somehow help you regulate your nervous system, that means we are a successful couple. And it does. However, the even more successful couples, which nobody talks about, are the couples who
Having
don't...
great sex.
Okay.
No? Is that not? Come on, it's just such a low hanging.
It is. The even more successful couples are the ones who don't get dysregulated in the first place. Who know that when they're talking about something hard, something, you know, really complicated or tender, that it's not personal. And that is scientifically backed. And this is the same principle of consultation, and it's the same thing that we try to talk about in the events that we have.
So you guys are all in on these conversations. This is fascinating. We haven't had anyone on the show remotely talking about this arena.
Oh, cool.
And I think this is really cool and much, much needed. Because finding someone and developing real intimacy and courtship and commitment and mutual trust is the foundation of family, regardless of gender. It's the foundation of building a family. And you can't have good families without that kind of like that strong cemented foundation
Totally.
of the two parental figures at the center of it. This conversation couldn't be more important. So, what is Can We Talk?
Ooh, the hardest question to answer.
It is not.
No, I'm always wanting to drill deeper and deeper and like understand something better. So I sometimes lose sight of it and then gain sight of it again.
I love
Why
how
don't you
you're like,
start?
I'm always trying to understand something
Yeah,
better. I don't
she's
know.
totally content with
She's
a
just
superficial, just like just a mantra.
Yeah.
She's happy with.
Can we talk?
Can we talk?
Why don't you go ahead and describe it?
It's
Is it a live event?
Yes.
Is it online? Is it a podcast?
Well, what's really
Is it a
live?
video?
Like Rainn, like what I'm
okay.
trying to say.
Who invited this guy? It's a live event. We go to different, typically universities, colleges around the country, and talk with students about really how to have meaningful conversations during really polarized, difficult times. So we talk.
Not just about love.
No, it's actually very little
it could
about
be
love.
politics.
That's
it could
true.
be-
We start in the entrance point that hopefully y'all just got if you didn't cut it to pieces.
That brings people in.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's kind of where we start
Mhm.
because that's kind of where we meet, right? That's
Mhm.
where we have relevance. I don't have
Yeah.
any like authority or expertise, obviously, the way that she does, but I have experience in that kind of that stuff. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But then what we draw out from that is this idea that actually all relationships, whether it's between, you could talk about this sort of ideal of two people who are married, where you tend to learn a lot about your imperfections and how to listen and be patient and discover truth together, or build something true together. Or if it's even like we're talking about nations, like literally the international stage, the same principles of relationships apply to all levels. Of course, they complexify and are different at different levels, the same way any law applies to anything, the same way that gravity is a bit different at the macro, the same.
Our focus is on how to have healthy discourse. It's not focusing necessarily on love or politics or religion. It's more about we've lost the ability to connect on our level of being humans and realizing that we actually probably have more in common than we have different. And instead, we've become so combative that we've completely lost the plot. We don't know how to talk about anything. We're not
Right.
making progress. So our focus is really on how to have these harder conversations. I bring in the psychological component of how to effectively communicate principles of conflict, how the mind works, how defensiveness can work, what becomes constructive. And so the psychological component, but what Penn brings to
Yeah,
the
what do I
table
bring to
that
this?
I don't think you give yourself enough credit, because the media really does shape how we view each other and how we allow ourselves to talk to each other. And you've been in the hub of that for so long.
The belly of the beast,
Yeah. And so
corroded by its stomach acid, but alive.
But
I'm
here-
still here. So this thing has, in a way, just gotten started. It was sort of slow going because of the pandemic, work, children, etc. But we've had about half a dozen, 7.
we've done like 6 or 7, yeah.
And breakout groups also is something that we've talked about. We've talked about like, okay, how far can we even get with this platform as it exists? 2 people on a stage with a microphone, microphones in the crowd, and it is quite interactive. I mean, there have been such resoundingly profound, affecting moments for all of us. Like, every time there's at least a few moments where it's like, this is really rewarding, and it's like a confirmation that we should keep doing this. You know what I
Why we're
mean?
here.
But surely it's going to always grow and change, and we would like to see it grow and change, and that would mean we've got to find a way to like, this is how you practically apply it. Let's do that together,
Right.
and then let's like even be able to have continuity where you
So
check
there could
back
be-
in. But that's
There could be a workbook or a book that comes out of this.
theoretically there
The
could
work
be.
It's
that
been
you're doing.
suggested.
Yeah.
So how can people find out more about Can We Talk and what you guys are doing, or bring your road show to their local college or university? Do you have a website or a social media way to reach you guys?
Both.
All the things.
Yeah, we have a website which can't help but feel archaic because it's like go on your computer and type in
Log in.
www. What is the address? I don't even know.
It's
it offhand.
canwetalkseries.com.
Yeah, we just started it.
Can We
Yeah.
Talk series?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because canwetalk.com was
Okay,
not
canwetalkseries.com.
Yeah, because
Okay.
it's a discourse series.
Okay.
So canwetalkseries.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then it explains a little bit about what we do, how to contact us. Our social media is also Can We Talk Series. And
We're on TikTok and Instagram.
And
Yeah.
Penn, what's your cell phone number?
So yeah, Can We Talk Series on all the things. And right now we're booking for East Coast for the fall.
Yeah.
Right? Ideally like New York, New England-y
Amazing.
areas.
Yeah.
And then hopefully branching outside of that in spring. Right? And then so we're open for business. If you want us
love
to
it.
come to your school, it helps for schools to contact us. A lot of people are like, come to us. Call, like, I want you to come to my university, and call their activities office. And it's a little more complicated.
You need to get an offer email, an offer letter.
Y'all got to come to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, a part of what I do is I speak on college campuses a lot about mental health and also about spiritual tools for mental health, and a little bit about my story. And there's nothing more beautiful or powerful than talking to people that are on the front lines,
Kiddos.
these young folks
Kiddos.
that are on the front lines of kind of societal collapse and confusion and the mental health epidemic, and trying to find tools
They
to
care
make their
so
lives
much.
better. Absolutely.
It's the world they're inheriting,
Yeah.
from us. I was there not long ago. We all were, and it's like,
they were not given the tools,
Yeah.
and so they have to find tools. And if folks have tools to offer, all the better.
We try.
yeah, we're
Thank
just
you
trying to give
so
them some
much
Thank you
for coming to
having
Soul
us.
Boom. What a delightful
you.
conversation.
This was great.
Yeah,
Thank you
it's
so
nice.
much
Great.
for having us.
Good luck with your mission.
Thank you.
All right.
The Soul Boom Podcast. Subscribe now on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you get your stupid podcasts.